Good morning, Warriors. Back with another episode of Vigor Warriors 2 and the 1% Club. How are we doing this morning? We are looking at, what is today? Today is September 28th, I believe, 2022. Hope you guys are on your purpose. Hope you guys are going along with your plan to retain, my friends. Retain. So, once again, I am just overwhelmed with gratefulness for you guys and what you're doing. I think we're at 600 and some now, 610 or something like that. We're getting pretty close to it. And I just appreciate all you guys, giving comments, donations, all kinds of things like that. I appreciate that a great deal. And we had a bunch of good comments yesterday again. I'm going to try to get to some of these as I go along. I know that we had a bunch. I'm trying to read this as I'm sitting here. Let's see. We had somebody is going to talk. I'm going to talk about lust today. Nizar asked me to talk about that as well, so we're going to do that as well. My magic, I think it is. Stronger memory. We'll get to that one at some point. Tori's got one on practicing monk mode. Spiritual wisdom had a couple nice comments. Thank you. Willem, thank you as well. Aaron Zawicki was a nice comment. Anti-aging. I think I'm going to focus on that one as well. I think Nizar asked me for that one as well as Willem. So I'm going to talk about the Fountain of Youth on that one. And once again, supplements. We'll talk about that one a little bit as well. So thank you guys so much for your comments and all the things. 1% Club, Wads Click, thank you so much. The Real Legend, you guys are just tremendous. Abstract One as well. So thank you guys for all your comments. I'll try to keep up to date with that as I can. But we'll talk about what Nizar and I, Z-A-R, I think is Nizar, and somebody, one of the other viewers that we had, wanted me to talk about, and that is lust. Let's talk about lust and retention, and let's kind of delve into this one a little bit and see kind of where we go with it. So the idea that we're talking about here, and we've talked about a couple of these, about women surrounding you and throwing themselves at you, it all is a matter of, it's kind of life is kind of, in my opinion, an illusion about what's happening. A lot of times we think we should be one way, but what ends up happening is that we end up really being another way, another option, another way. And this is the case when it comes to lust. I believe that this is an attitude, something that's within a person that comes out and says, I am just lusting after something. Now, we're talking about people, for the most part, not these women, but you could be lusting after anything. They call that having an idol, idolizing this, and like the Bible talks about you should not have idols. You should not go ahead and kind of use a lot of your energies to, kind of worship other things. And when you actually worship people, and women in this case, and you put them on a pedestal, you're basically going through lust. You call people that are thirsty, people who need to have other women, all those type of things. You're basically, really kind of saying, I can't live without this, and I need this so bad. Now, if it's one thing, it's God. If you're doing that, if you're lusting after the Lord, that's a whole different matter, and I think that's wonderful, and we should all be doing that. But when we're talking about lusting after women, this is really something that really becomes a kind of if it's not checked, put in check, it becomes really an addiction and a disease. Because what ends up happening is that you're following something that really is kind of an illusion. You're created in your mind, your imagination. And this is why I kind of talk about this but first, before we start talking about how to overcome it, in my opinion, you got to look at what the lust is. Lust is an imaginary type of perception you have of somebody. And this is important to look at because a lot of times, in order to overcome the lust, you have to change the perception you have. Let me say that again. So as soon as you look at lusting someone, your perception, your mind, you're creating an illusion. This is where most of the problems for men come. We create fantasies in our mind We look at a picture, we create a story around it. We put like a narrative around the picture. Or we see a person, we may or may not know the person, we put a narrative around it. Now, I think women play into this a lot because they want the attention and they like to draw the attention from men. So they create an illusion. They dress up, they put on makeup, they put all kinds of stuff up to look good. But a lot of times what's happening is they're creating an illusion because this is not how they actually look. And if you see people without makeup, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I've seen people actually get divorced once they figured out the person doesn't look anywhere near they do on makeup. And you can hide people like crazy when it comes to pictures. I mean, all you gotta do is look at YouTube and you'll see, I think it's called Dove or something like that, where a place where they can actually take an apple and Photoshop it and make it look like a beautiful woman. And so these things are things that are, can be easily manufactured and looked at. So the picture you're seeing is really an illusion. But again, in your mind, you're lusting because you're creating a story. And the problem is that story will never reach the potential you want it to reach because it's a made-up image you have. And people are not that way. That's why a lot of people get disappointed. Once they end up having, and sometimes, what happens because of the law of attraction, you can actually draw into your life those circumstances to achieve your goal. We do it all the time. But when people get what they want, they don't always like it because it's not what they imaged. It's not what they lusted after. It's not what they actually created in their own minds. And because of that, we get continually disappointed, and so we need to try it harder and harder. And so you see one picture, and all of a sudden now you're going to another picture or another person. One person's you're not satisfied with. Now I got to do a second person or another person down the line, or double people or three people. All of a sudden, this is how you get into the orgies and all the Roman Empire stuff that we saw thousands of years ago, and it's happening today in different parts of the world, of course, in our United States as well. People have that because they can't overcome that story, and they've never reached that fantasy that they wanted. So everybody has these type of stories they create, and the key to all this is to eliminate and stop the stories. So as you create a story, you have to recreate that story. And so you recreate the story for the honor of God. And so what ends up happening is that now you're saying, okay, I am not going to create this story. I'm going to move away from the story. I'm not going to consider the story. I'm going to move away. Now, how do you do that? Well, there's a lot of different types of techniques to do that. A lot of it is that you're trying to refocus your thinking on what you want it to focus on, your goals. So create stories about your goals instead of creating stories about these women. And when you look and you see a picture, move away from the picture and don't think about the picture. So part of the lust comes from this story and fantasy you created. And so you have to eliminate that fantasy. Now, getting yourself involved in a lot of activities is one way to start doing that. Obviously, as you focus on other things, you won't have time to create that. But you also want to be purposeful as well. You want to create a story that gets you away from lusting after women. Your story might include one person instead of multiple people. But your story might also include something where you're focusing on bettering yourself. And the only thing I'm interested in is bettering myself. Because what's going to happen is that if you get to that point where people are surrounding you, or you get to that point where women are asking, giving you all that attention, which is you're going to get, just a matter of time. It happens to me every day. You have to kind of basically have that mental image and mental approach of saying, I'm not interested in this. I have other things I need to do. Now, what's going to happen is subconsciously, a lot of those women will come after you harder. This is not an easy battle we're talking about here. And the devil, he disguised and uses lots of people in different ways. And they'll use people to bring you down. And this happens to all of us. I mean, the goal of the devil is to get you to renounce God. And you cannot allow that to happen no matter what happens. Because you fought so hard to have God in your life, you can't go ahead and be renounced because of someone who is placed in front of you all of a sudden and is interested in having some sort of relationship with you. So as you focus on this, it's important to recognize that there is a purpose behind all these temptations and things around you. And you have to be careful of the fantasies. That's why we always talk about not having the birds in your head flying over, but not allowing them to nest in your head. And when we talk about that, what we're talking about is the idea that you're really trying to kind of create a new story about your life, a new image, a new way of living. And that way is not sitting there and fantasizing about women, because that leads you to looking at pictures, that leads you to going down the wrong path with people, and it's focusing on one-night stands, and all these other types of deviant behaviors that people get involved in. See, a lot of times if people were conscious enough and realize what they're doing, I mean, the common sense approach would be, well, I'm not going to think about that. I'm going to move past it. Now, some people, they can't control that. And this is where we talk about the self-control. We have to get to the point where we are ingrained. And as you do this more, this is a 61-year-old man talking here. As you do this more, I mean, it's not easy. As you do this more, you're going to be able to build a better habit to be able to not fall for this. And this is the whole key. Now, as we talked about yesterday, when Oscar and Junior were talking about, you're going to get women upset with you. They're going to stare at you. They're going to flaunt you. They're going to be just throwing yourself, eventually just throwing it. As you become stronger and stronger, that power is so overwhelming, they're not going to be able to resist that power. And they don't even know why that's happening in most cases. But it's a biological thing, because they realize you're keeping your energy, your seed. And a lot of men don't. A lot of men waste it because of the devil's temptations. And for what? Is there anything really being accomplished by it except for a short-term pleasure? Not really. But the lust is the problem. The problem is not the actual behavior, because, you could theoretically, lose energy and still get back on track. The problem is not the behavior itself. The problem is not the fact that you're just going ahead and releasing energy once in a while. The problem is it becomes a lifestyle, and now you're creating that lust in your heart because of that. So, all right, my friends, I want to cut this one short a little bit. I hope this helped a little bit. Thank you for Nizar. Thank you for somebody to kind of talk about this a little bit. I hope that you guys have a great day, and you guys continue to battle on and get away from that lust. I may talk a second one on lust pretty soon as well. All right, God bless you guys, and battle on!